Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the General Government Committee meeting. And may we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Dennehy?
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez? Absent. Councilmember Jaquez? Absent. Councilmember Meisner?
Here.
Councilmember Reed? Absent. Councilmember B. Smith? Absent. Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Here.
Mayor Smith?
Here.
So what we have on our agenda tonight is a discussion of the year-end review in regards to what our 2020 business plan has been. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan or Rick.
Yeah, so we actually have two things tonight. It's the business plan, or the year-end review, and then also the strategic plan, the balanced scorecard. We'll have a presentation from Mark Cutler. The measures team has worked on putting together those measures that we discussed in September, so we'll be bringing those forward to you for that as well. So for 2020, it was certainly a unique year from a COVID standpoint, but that didn't slow down any of the work that the city was doing. As a matter of fact, I think we may have accomplished more this year than any other year with considering all the projects that we worked on, all of the regulations that we were able to update and streamline. So I'll go through this list fairly quickly, but because I want to leave a lot of time for the measures team or for the measures discussion. We updated our Laserfish system, which is the records management system that we use for putting together the council packets, as well as maintaining the records for ordinances and resolutions. We updated our International Building Code from 2006 to 2018. That was a huge project. Took a lot of time from our attorneys, as well as Kathy, our building official. We also updated the contractors licensing ordinance, allowing contractors to have more, on a limited basis, have additional licenses if they're just doing a couple of trade skills. We're up, that license renewal is going on right now. We're seeing a lot of contractors who have only done the limited license before applying for multiple trades. So that was a very good update, and we're seeing utilization of that now. Code enforcement did a dumpster cleanup, both October 9th and October 23rd. From an economic development standpoint, last August, August of 19, we started the urban renewal process. We were able to complete that process this year. That took a lot of staff time as well. And that, of course, we've got an urban renewal meeting later tonight. That was a big project. Our Colorado Main Street Strategic Plan and the DCI Challenge Program was something that we undertook this year as well. Being a member of DCI and being a challenge community this year was especially helpful because DCI came to the table with all kinds of additional tools and helping us with relationships and different ideas for COVID, and making sure that we were trying to find ways to help our local businesses. There was a lot of stuff that happened, today actually, just from delivering of to-go materials for our restaurants, and we're continuing to work on building those relationships and building those bridges. And the Main Street Strategic Plan and DCI Challenge Program was a good key part of that strategy. We added a grant writer this year, and in addition to applying for and receiving over $1 million in grants, we were also distributing the CARES Act grants. So we received that federal allocation of just over $1.3 million, and anticipating that we'll end up using most of it, and about 85% of that is not going to be used by the city government itself. It's money that we are pushing back out into the business community and to the community in general. So, so our grant writer and the economic development team have been working especially hard, making sure that we're getting out that type of information and those programs. From an engineering and the 2A project, 9th Street reconstruction was a big one. Meadows Avenue, We did our CMAQ program like we do every year. We did some water main replacements to go along with 2A, as well as the work that we're doing on Central Avenue, and then prepping the Orchard Avenue as well. Stormwater projects, we did the stormwater replacements to go along with the 2A project. We did the Dawson Ranch Culvert Improvement Project. The Abbey Basin, the Rhodes Avenue project is in process. And then Northeast Basin WPA Channel project was started as well. We've got the pedestrian improvement project along 115 that is ongoing. We're expecting to do some of that work next year, and as well as the pedestrian improvement project for Highway 50. I mentioned CMAQ, the gravel street paving project. We did some of that this year as well, and we're projecting to do that program ended in 2019, but we have some carryover funds that we're trying to get, or 2020, I'm sorry, but we're trying to carry over some of those funds to 2021 as well to complete a couple smaller projects. Let's see, the wayfinding signs was another big project that we got, completed this year. We have a couple of directional signs, I'd say a couple, but part of that project from a directional standpoint still needs to be completed. It's the second phase, but a lot of the big monument signs, the district signs, those got completed this year, as well as that first phase of directional signs. Let's see, finance helped update those sales tax definitions, and then we moved to, or will be moving at the first of the year to state collected. Again, another big project that took a lot of staff time and legal time, but we're setting the table to streamline our processes. This makes it easier for our businesses when they go to remit their sales tax to the states and county. They can also remit to the city and use the same system and do it all at the same time. And then from a bidding standpoint, we moved to an online bid system called BidNet, and we're seeing a lot more bids coming in, more competitive bids. We're reaching businesses that they can bid on city projects that we haven't reached before, and having that competitive system, or having more choices creates that competition, and hopefully we'll continue to drive some of those prices down. So that's another big move that we had. From the human resources standpoint, and you guys just approved it on Monday, that human resources employee handbook. Again, that was an all-year project. We were just about done, and then the state decided to make a bunch of changes to employee law, and we had to go back and rethink and rehash some of those items again, but we did get that done this year. We also implemented Paylocity for payroll as well as recruitment. Just like the online BidNet system, from a recruitment standpoint, we're seeing a lot more candidates coming through. We're reaching a broader audience, and again, having competition, having choice is a good thing, and a lot of what we're doing is moving us in that direction. The IT department, our department of two, stays very busy. They've updated printers, door controls, replaced our email system. They've been working on cybersecurity end user training, making sure that we, as employees and users of the system, are aware of those cybersecurity threats that are out there, to make sure that our system doesn't get compromised. They've worked on security surveillance systems, and then the fiber project, connecting all the buildings with fiber, is getting ready to wrap up as well. So we're getting very close to the end of that project, and that's a very big project as well, which will help a lot of our buildings stay connected. They don't have very good IT in some of those buildings, or very good internet connections, and some of our phone systems run through the internet, and it causes a lot of problems. So that update will certainly help. Library and museum both stayed very busy with COVID, trying to find different ways to reach customers, rethinking programming. We went to carry out or, curbside service for most of the year, trying to make sure that we're still serving those in need. And then every book that comes back gets sanitized, before it goes back on the shelf. We have a UV system as well as just hand wipes to make sure that the public's being safe and limiting that exposure to COVID. I mentioned the museum, State Historic Fund grants, our Bureau of Land Management grants, and then we also completed the Certified Local Government this year. That was a project that had been on in the wings for a while. It's kind of been on the list. So that Historic Preservation Commission has been meeting all year, and we have received our first application to go through that, the Certified Local Government process for a local designation, and we're anticipating more coming through. So again, something that we're trying to do for the community, connecting these building owners to opportunities to preserve these buildings and make sure that they're aware of these tax credits that are available for them. Parks and open space, we completed the East Ridge Campground. We've started charging for camping at that East Ridge Campground. We did the personal flotation device loaner stations along the river. Those were manufactured in-house to keep the cost of those down. And we've been working on the Tunnel Drive to Royal Gorge connection as well. They were out there this week trying to get some work done before the ground freezes. So that project is continuing and getting closer to its completion as well. And then we had a couple of cleanup events on Skyline Drive. Those were some very big events, and pulled off a lot of trash, a lot of tires, microwaves, computer monitors, all kinds of things, cleaning up that Skyline Drive area. Of course, the big project for planning and zoning, and it's occupied a lot of time for City Council staff and Planning Commission, is the update to the comprehensive plan. We're about 6 months into this project. We've got about another 6 months to go before we're done, but that is a huge project, thanks to a grant from the Department of Local Affairs that has helped paying for that update. Last time it was updated was 1999, and that was just a minor update to the 1980 comprehensive plan. So again, lots of good work happening here. And then Patrick and Planning and Zoning updated subdivision development standards. That was a quick fix that we did to help alleviate some problems before we went through the comp plan update. Those development standards will be updated as part of the comprehensive plan as well. Finally, looking at the streets department, they will be taking over. We've got the vac truck on order. It's actually on its way. It will be here for January. So that vacuum truck will be getting ready to be operational, and we'll start working on cleaning out culverts and storm water systems, and very looking forward to having that operational as well. And as you can see, the last page, update from the water department, the 800 block of bridge, that water main was replaced as part of the CMAQ project to get those dirt roads paved. We added the second bulk water filling station to serve the commercial customers. That has cut down on wait times for folks that are using the water hauling, the bulk water station. Has improved customer service greatly up there. Only received positive things about that. And then the water main replacements over on 9th Street between Royal Gorge and Mystic. We talked about that, as well as the Central Avenue one. So that is, in a nutshell, or the quick version, everything that we did this year. And I'm very proud of our staff and all the hard work that they did this year under the very difficult circumstances. And wearing masks and everything else. But we have a great staff that did some great work this year, and I'm thankful that we get to go through this journey with them.
And that's very evident in the results that if I can speak for council, that council is seeing. It's quite evident that we have a lot of hard workers here in the city. And I just want to say on a personal note, I'm glad you could breathe during the recitation of that list there, Ryan. Jim?
Thank you, Ryan. You seem to have left off, it's probably more of an accomplishment from council that we ended up with a new administrator this year also, which is doing a good job in getting us through the COVID. So we appreciate your efforts there, at least I do. I mean, and I know that council does.
Thank you.
But a couple of questions on the code enforcement page 3, where you're talking about the dumpster program.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that the dumpsters were in 3 locations, but you give results for, am I missing it, only 2 locations?
No, we did 2 dates, multiple locations. So I think that we had 3 locations on each of those dates. So they were,
Oh, okay, I see.
and it
The
said,
results are for the 2 dates.
yeah, and it says Merlino's there, but it was the Constantino's parking lot. We had one up at Harrison and then Justice Center Road. So we had those 3 locations on both of those dates.
Okay, I see it now. So then, the follow-up question relative to that, if I'm allowed, is that it looks like we had total 71 participants between those 2 days. Do you know how that compares to the number of vouchers that we normally distributed through the city?
I think we did 100 vouchers last year. I would have to double check. But unfortunately, we didn't do the voucher program because it always draws a
Right.
crowd.
Right.
But we did fill those dumpsters.
Right.
So.
No, I don't know that the
Yep.
dumpster thing isn't, I mean, other than the fact it has to be supervised, I guess.
Yep.
Which the voucher thing doesn't, so you got to balance it, I guess.
Right.
But that's where they actually get rid of stuff, where the vouchers, it might get used, so.
That's a good point. You're right. It is a good,
Weren't using them, and they were gone
the
the
first
first day.
morning.
The
Yeah.
first day. So,
Okay. You done?
Well, I've got another question
Sure.
if nobody else does.
No, well, we have other people, but if you want.
Go ahead.
Okay, Ashley?
I just had some things to add too, and one of them was initiated by Councilmember Brandon Smith, and I think it's also really important, and that's the IGA that we had with the CCHS and Red Park and CCPD. I mean, that was really huge for the history of that park, to be able to have that cleaned up during school hours. And also, I would have liked to have seen some reports from CCPD, like the number, of how many drugs were apprehended, how many arrests, or other statistics that they were able to achieve during the year. Lives saved by Narcan and what, and all of that.
And we can certainly add on to that, and we'll publish this report after we make some of those additions.
And Jim?
I don't notice any mention of Braxton in here,
Buxton?
or Buxton, whoever it is.
Yeah, I don't know that we put Buxton in here,
I
but,
couldn't find it.
yeah,
I didn't do a word search, but,
Yeah, that's another big one.
yeah.
I mean, I think that's a huge project. Huge.
Tim?
Yeah, Ryan, this is just a couple, really simple questions, just because I had heard it early in the year. Did we get all the life jackets in that back? This is kind of a late question, but, remember when they were does anybody know if they ever got,
I think they did come back.
good.
I think it took a while. I think people were taking them home
Okay,
for their kids. But I believe they came back. Rex is not on.
no,
But-
I was just kind of curious, and then.
I think so. But that also caused him to not put more out,
Right, and
so unfortunately.
hopefully that'll change. My other question is just, and I could look on the thing, How does that second bulk water station, are we seeing quite a bit of increase in just water sales with that?
Yeah, we'll have to do an analysis on that. And it reminds me, I missed
Along with the meters.
a meters update for
Right.
Councilman Meisner. We'd have to do an analysis to see what the usage has been. I can tell you from a customer service standpoint, the users are much happier because they're not waiting in line. The line is not nearly as long as it was last year. And, those smaller, the smaller haulers are able to move through, the domestic haulers are able to move through much quicker. And the commercial haulers, we've upped the flow capacity for them so we can fill their tankers much faster.
Okay, no, I think it's great.
Yeah, and I would say, I just recently did a chat with the mayor, with Bob Hartzman, and from a customer service too. He says it's been an overflowing success, that the users are incredibly happy. I mean, we're going from 1.5 hour waits to maybe 30-minute waits for a lot of those users. So much, much more efficient.
Any other comments or questions from council? Sure, Brant.
Sorry, my button's not working. I just kind of wanted to take this opportunity to thank Ryan and Cindy and the rest of staff for easing us new council members in this year. It was, in some retrospect, like drinking from a fire hose, especially with all of our COVID challenges that we had.
Sure.
And I just really appreciate you guys being patient with the new council members and taking the time to, explain things out or, break things down for us like you did. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
Jim?
So you said you're going to publish this, you're going to set it up on one of the websites or something?
Yeah, we'd put it on the
Okay.
website and social media. Yep.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
Oh, just a final word of thanks too. We also have Christy Gotham on Zoom, and she's the one that prepared this document. I know she put a lot of hard work into this. And the hard work really goes back to our staff and department heads who made all these many, many accomplishments. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Would add dittos to that.
Yeah.
If there's no other questions, I believe we're ready to go into the second part of the meeting.
Okay, great. We have Mark Cutler on the line from Ascendant Strategic Management Group. Mark guided council through their strategic planning session in September. We're moving to a balanced scorecard format. It's really designed to be goal-oriented with action steps and really established to improve accountability. And with that, I think before I do that, we did establish a measures team with 6 department heads. Myself and Mark provided support for that team. And the measures that you're seeing before you today, those are going to be the measures that we're proposing, and those were developed by staff. Mark, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let me make sure I can share my screen. Okay, so does everybody see the presentation? Looks like you do.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Ryan. Yes, we spent we've spent over a month with the measures team putting together measures. So what I'm going to do tonight is take you through the process we use and then introduce them, just refresh your memory quickly about the scorecard or the strategy map we developed, and then walk you through the measures that we developed as a measures team. It was a lot of hard work that the team went through, and I think they came out with a really good outcome.
I'm sorry, Mark, I'm having a hard time hearing you. I don't know if anybody else is. This is Dolly. I wondered if there was a way maybe you could turn up your phone, and that might help us hear you clearer with the
let me see if is that any better? I'm using a headset, and I'm not on a phone, I'm on a laptop.
Or maybe
so
it's through.
Let me check my settings and see if that can help at all. Let's see. Is that any better? Can you hear me better now?
Yeah. Yes. No?
Okay, perfect.
No, it's not to me. Sorry. They're saying yes, I'm saying no.
Let me try one more time.
just-
How about now?
Do the best you can, get as close to your microphone as you can, and
I'm as
He's
close
got
to my
him in his
microphone
ears.
as I can be. Let me
Okay.
try one more. Let me try one more thing. Is that any better?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, way better. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Then you'll just. Well, you're not seeing my face. So I'm right in front of the screen. So okay, and I'll talk loudly as well. So the first thing I wanted to go over is kind of the process we went through in putting together the measures. First of all, City Council agreed to the strategy map back in September, as Ryan noted, and we created a measures team of 6 department heads, as Ryan stated as well. On September 29th, I provided training, measures training on to these department heads on the BSC Balanced Scorecard measures, concepts, and best practices to get them to understand what we were trying to do and how we were trying to go about it. And then we divided the group into 3 teams of 2. So everybody had a partner to work with, and we assigned each of those teams 4 to 5 strategic objectives to work on. So we have a strategy map of 14 strategic objectives, so 4 to 5 for each group of 3. So they had 4 to 5 objectives for which they had to start working on measures. We gave them homework assignments to complete offline with either at their desk or with their partners, and templates to help them do that, with questions to help them focus in on what the measures were. And then we met 3 subsequent times, on October 12th, 21st, and November 2nd. So over a course of a month, to review the work and provide feedback to get a finalized set of strategic measures. And what people would do is the day or 2 before the next meeting, they would send me their work, and I would go over it and provide feedback and additional ideas on measures and so forth. And by this iterative process of meeting once, twice, 3 times, we slowly went from brainstorming a set of measures for each objective to whittling down to the 1 or 2 best measures for each objective. As Ryan noted, we had a team of 6 people. I just want to thank them again: Rick Harmon, Bob Hartzman, Jim Johnson, Ivy Morris, Tammy Nordike, and Tammy Wagner, who did all this work. This is the hardest part about putting together a strategy with the balanced scorecard, developing the measures. So the team did a really great job. To refresh your memory, this is the Canyon City strategy map that we agreed to back in September. I'm not going to go through each of the objectives again because we'll go through them one at a time with the measures, but just wanted to put it up there and then show you what it looks like with each of the measures below them. So each of these boxes is an objective, and it might be hard to see, but we'll, as I said, we'll focus in on this in each individual objective one at a time. But we have about 2 measures per objective, so there's 14 objectives. And we've got actually 27 measures. Only one objective only has 1 measure. But if you recall back in September when we started this process, I said that ideally you want 1 or 2 measures per objective. So I usually say 1.5. So if you have 14 objectives, 21 measures is really the ideal amount. You don't want to have too many measures because then it becomes too unwieldy and too unmanageable. If you have 1, maybe 2 for each, you're in good shape. So we right now have 27, which is almost 2 per objective. However, I think that's fine because what we often find when we start implementing a balanced scorecard is some of the measures you come up with become they don't quite work as you thought they were going to be, or it's too hard to get the data, so some of them kind of go away. So I think we'll probably end up with 21, 22, 23, the right amount by as we go through this process. So I think we're really good with the number of measures we came up with. So let me dive into, now I'm going to go through from the top of the strategy map to the bottom, each objective and the measures that we proposed. And please, if you have questions, just interrupt me and ask. But so the first one, in the customer perspective, we had the objective of Canyon City continually improves its citizens' quality of life. The first proposed measure is the % of see-click fix complaints that are resolved. And the rationale we had for picking this measure is that this measures the rate at which we fix things in the community, which hence improves the quality of life in our community. So we thought this was a good way of measuring that. In addition, we thought we would have a citizen survey, get scored on a 0 to 10 or something like that, asking the citizens how much they agree with the statement, Canyon City continually improves its citizens' quality of life. We had this measure because it's a direct measure of how much citizens agree with the statement. So what we have here is one kind of objective measure, the see-click fix thing, which is database, and then one kind of more subjective, but it's asking the citizens if they agree with the statement. So we have 2, what I believe are pretty good measures right there for that first objective.
How are they going to do that survey?
So I would say this, that some of these measures that we come up with, some of them are data that's already being collected, and others are things that we have to start collecting. So people talked about the feasibility of doing a survey. I'm not sure, 100% sure of the mechanics of that, but lots of organizations, whether they be cities or counties or corporations, survey their customers or citizens. So I think there's probably a feasible way of doing that. I'm not sure if there's a survey tool you guys already use or not, but survey is a pretty common way of getting stakeholder or customer feedback.
Yeah, we had a couple different discussions along those lines, something along the lines of what we had done in the past, which was that community survey. We've also had some discussions around department surveys as well. So I think we still need to hone in on that a little bit more.
And as I take you through this, you'll see, as I said, that some of these are things that we're already collecting, and so we have the data already, and others are kind of new things. And that's pretty typical when we put together a balanced scorecard. I typically say that we usually see about 50% of the measures are things that we're already collecting, 50% are new things, which is normal because oftentimes when you develop a new strategy, you're doing new things, so you need to collect new data. So it's pretty common. Any other questions before I move on to the next one? I just want to note, so you'll see this box in the top right here that says objective owner. That's just a note because eventually when we go to implement the scorecard, there should be a name of a person, a staff who's accountable for reporting out on that particular objective, which means how reporting the measure data. So this is just a reminder that we're going to have to put a name next to this, so we have the accountability there. So moving on to the next objective, in the customer perspective, we are a customer-focused, business-friendly community. The first proposed measure is the number of new businesses that are still in business in 3 years. And the rationale for this one is, if we are customer-focused and business-friendly, we will do the things necessary to help businesses succeed. And the second one is percent of business prospects that open in Kansas City, kind of a success rate. So if an increasing percent of business prospects open in the city, we believe that tells us we're a customer-focused, business-friendly community. That makes sense. Any questions on those?
What's the percentage? I mean, don't you have to have a comparison to have a percentage?
Yeah, so business prospects is the denominator, and the numerator would be the ones that actually open.
So we have a list of basically a project pipeline, and people that are inquiring about opening businesses in the city. Those who actually go through and complete those projects would be the ones that are completing that percentage. So I think we'd probably have to have some type of vetting system to make sure that it's not just anybody that calls up and says I want to open a business, but we need to vet it so that we know that they're viable business prospects.
Any other questions? Okay. Move on to the next one. The third objective and customer perspective is Canyon City is a dynamic destination with a small town feel. And the proposed measures for this objective are the percent change in hotel occupancy rate year on year, which tells us if visitors increasingly find us a destination they want to visit, the hotel occupancy rate is going up. And then the second one would be a heat map of visitors by zip code. So you can imagine a map that shows by color a map of Colorado that shows by color where different visitors are coming from, so you get an idea of where people that come to visit Canyon City are from.
I have a question about that. It says a question mark if the bridge would collect that. Isn't that something Buxton could collect for us?
Yeah, that's the way we're looking at it, yeah. And we're debating whether the heat map is the right way to go because it's not necessarily objective data. It's a visual representation. So I'm evaluating the Buxton reporting process or reporting capabilities a little bit more to see what we can get. If we can get, maybe we can get a report that removes Fremont County phone numbers from the process or something like that, and see where these people are coming from zip code wise, or but there's still a little bit of work going into this one.
Okay. Now let's move on to the next one. In the financial perspective, our Objective was spend tax dollars efficiently and responsibly. And the first proposed measure is the percent of city projects finished on time and on budget. And the rationale is that this tells us that, that tax dollars are being used efficiently and effectively because city projects are getting done on time and on budget. So it tells us that money is being spent wisely. The second one is our city bond rating, looking at it year on year. This gives us an objective outsider's view of our economic standing. That's the rationale behind those. Any questions on those? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the second objective in the financial perspective, which was maintain a balanced, diversified economy. The proposed measures here were, number one, the percent of annual increase of people employed by each industry. And this tells us if one industry is dominating the employment of the city residents or if employment is more evenly distributed or more balanced among industries. So we would look at the universe of major industries that employ people in the city and then look at the increase of people in each of those industries. The second one is the number of industry sectors in Canyon City per year. This tells us how many dominant industry sectors we have in the city and lets us know if we are too dependent on any one or two. So that's about the diversification and balance. Any question on those? Okay. Moving on, we're going to go to the internal processes now. And the first theme in internal processes was community engagement, where we had an objective of establish and promote our identity and nurture community pride. The first proposed measure is the number of #MyCanyonCity hashtags per month that we see. It provides a measure of how well we are promoting the city and people are responding to our promotion of the city. And then the second one will be the number of promotional events held. And this directly counts how often we promote the city with specific events. So I thought these would be two good measures for this objective. Questions on those? Okay, moving on to the next one in community engagement. It was create programming that engages people. The first proposed measure is the percent of programs that achieved our participation goal. The rationale is that it tells us we are holding events that people are attending. And the assumption is if they continue to attend, we are engaging them. So it's not just about holding events, but making sure that setting a goal, if we hold this event, we expect to have 100 people, and do we achieve that? If we can look at each event and we achieve our participation goal, then we think we're engaging people. The second one is the percent of participant positive responses to events, regardless of medium, whether it's social media or survey or comment cards and so forth. This gives us direct evidence that people are responding positively to our events. So I understand some events, they'll ask you to fill out a comment card afterwards or maybe follow-up email or so forth. So we'll measure the percent of positive responses we get on those events. Any questions on those?
I have a question. What
Sure.
kind of programming are we referring to? Is it just special events, or is it just like programming at the museum, at the library? Would it include city council meetings, or, I mean?
I don't think we're talking about city council or just, general government meetings. I think we're talking about activities that are going to, help build community pride, drive traffic to our local businesses, that type of programming. So it may be, special events. It may be, more localized events that we're holding for the business community. It could be trainings or things along those lines. But overall, it's really trying to improve that community engagement, both from our residents as well as the business community.
So can I kind of piggyback off of what you're saying? I've been to several communities where there's just one calendar of events that happen for the year, and it's out in the public. You walk into a restaurant, it's sitting there. I know the chamber has a calendar, but it's not very well publicized, and I think that we could improve in this area greatly to make sure that people, when they visit, they'll come back. They'll say, oh, there's this event's happening or this event's happening. Is this something that we're talking about putting out as a city?
That's something.
If I could,
Sorry.
I would just say that, I'm sorry, I would just say that what Dolly, what you just said was kind of like what I would call an initiative, right? When you start to say what your strategy is and what you want to measure, you come up with these ideas. Well, we're not doing this well. What can we do to improve our performance there? So creating a one community calendar may be that kind of initiative. I mean, it would be something that's driven by the fact that we want to start measuring programs, right? So how we got to keep track of everything all in one place. So let's create one community calendar. So I think, to me, that would be an initiative underneath this objective.
And that is one we're working on.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think it'd be a great asset to our community to do that.
That ties directly into Tom's job, really, but he and I are talking about different ways that we could do that.
Right, and I'll say that I've heard that many, many times over the years that we need to have a common calendar, and that's especially through the nonprofits and all of the things that they promote and events that they put on too.
I've seen it even where, it's like a large calendar with the small boxes, and it has this event, from the date to date. And it's, people can hang it up and, look and see what's happening.
And
It's shoved in a drawer, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think, some of this is, the measures, or the overall create programming that engages people. Well, if you're creating programming and nobody knows about it, they can't be engaged. And I think that's part of what we're trying to solve here with these measures.
Yeah, and that includes, an online search, what's going on in Canyon City this weekend? And then there's a place that pops up that lets you know what's happening, and a calendar that's easy to access digitally.
I think what
Yeah.
goes along with that is it has to be sponsored or maintained by a neutral entity. And not that the city's neutral, but we're probably the most neutral that we can get. With all due respect, you get the chamber, and you always got this conflict about supporting non-chamber members, and, it's defeating the purpose, so.
Councilman, it's like you've been in our meetings. It is. That's exactly the line we're taking. And it's a challenge because the city, there was a line on my whiteboard that Tom put on there. There's a lot of toes in our community. There's a lot of toes you can step on in our community. So we're trying to come up with a way that we can facilitate, but not necessarily compete. And that's a little bit of a challenge, but it's right along the lines of what you're saying, is that there almost needs to be a neutral organization or, and that's the direction we're going.
Any other questions or comments on this subject? I'd like to ask us to back up to the efficiency of government objective.
Yes?
Okay, on this one, thinking about this one, the percent of city projects finished on time and on budget, the city bond rating, those are, the bond rating is really a measure of city health, okay, of city economic health. I would suggest that that we're spending tax dollars efficiently and responsibly, that a measure more in line with, in a particular department, say like planning and zoning, total dollars of projects divided by the number of FTEs. So you have project dollars by person involved that truly tells you then whether, because you can always add staff and you can always spend more money to get things done, but the question is, can you do it efficiently and responsibly? So that's my suggestion. You think about some measure like that, because to me, these measures don't hit at what, from my perspective, what I think that I would like to know as a councilman. So.
I can address, are you done? Sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was going to say, the one thing about that is what measure like a dollar of projects per FTE, to me, is really like an input measure, right? It's what you're putting in. You're spending money and you're applying people to it. And from the financial perspective, we're really looking for outcomes, right? So to me, if you're saying you're putting money and people to get things done, and the purpose of this measure here is to look at what percentage of things we're getting done. Not only getting done, but in a timely fashion and without spending extra money. So I hear where you're coming from. I think that might be a measure that might be somewhere maybe in the internal process, something more a input-oriented, but really you typically, as you might recall me saying, at the top of the strategy map up here, we're looking for outcomes. What's the outcome that's going to tell us we're spending tax dollars well? I don't think spending money and assigning people and stuff tells us outcomes. It tells us inputs. That's why I would recommend sticking with that. That's kind of the purpose of what we have here with respect to efficiency, the more outcome oriented.
And I'll call you in just a second, Dolly, but let me explain a little bit further what my thinking is there, because I'm not talking about city projects like repaving this street or installing that water main. What I'm talking about are the projects that we manage for the public, where we have public activity, whether it's, business dollars generated downtown by number of city FTEs responsible for that activity, or whether it's new development dollars that are being spent within town by the number of FTEs that are assigned by the city to those outside projects outside the city. And so that's my thinking there, that there's a metric. It seems to me there's a metric there that talks about efficiency, not just of how the city spends its money on city projects that we do on behalf of the public, but how the city spends its money in helping our residents achieve their goals, whether it's a business goal downtown or, a development goal, a construction of a new house, something like that. Yes, Ryan?
Yeah, so Councilman, or Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick, these goals that we're looking at right now are citywide type of goals. There will be another level of this, which is cascading it down to departments, and that might be a more department-specific goal or measure that we could use for economic development, or the building department or something along those lines to look at department efficiency.
Great, I thank you for that. And if you do that, then you may have to come back up and adjust what you're looking at under this particular goal. Dolly has been
Well,
wanting
what I was wanting to say was to this, I wrote down some notes as we went past this part, hoping to come back to this very topic. There are certain protocols that need to happen in order to achieve efficiency and to make sure that we're getting our projects done on time and on budget. And I would like personally to see that there's some kind of procedural safeguard in there somehow, saying that we've followed these procedures that have been laid out by council or staff or whatever it may be to make sure that these things are being done efficiently. Because that's where we tend to lose credibility, is not following procedures, not communicating, not being on, I think we know where we're getting, but
Yeah.
it comes down to not following procedure that's been laid out to make sure that we're following these.
Yeah, and again, I think, Mark mentioned this earlier, but, this is the measure. I think what you're talking about, having a streamlined procedure is one of the activities that gets us to that, be successful in that measure.
Yeah. So I'd like to see that in there.
Ashley.
And I'd like to piggyback on that too, when it comes to that data input, is it would be nice, and Rick, not to put you or your team on the line, but often, we hired 3 brand-new positions, and I've often said they're going to pay for themselves. And this year was really easy to say, well, they are distributing $2.1 million or $2.3 million of brand-new money to the city that we've never seen before, and so it shows they paid for themselves. So I'd continue to like to see that justification of these positions, and maybe efficiency in like building, permitting efficiency, code enforcement efficiency, and certificate of occupancy efficiencies and things like that.
Yeah, and again, I think those will be rolled out more at the department level, department level or specific measures.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark?
Okay, thanks for the good conversation. I think Ryan's exactly right. There's a lot of discussion about good measures, and we'll find probably these as we roll it out through departments. Okay, so let's get back to, were we finished with create programming that engages people? Okay, So let's move on to prioritize and implement development projects. This was the objective under economic development. And this is the one objective we had one measure for, but I think it's a very good one, which is the number of action items completed from the comprehensive plan, downtown strategic plan, and market analysis for next year. So the rationale for this is if we are completing action items, then we are implementing projects, and therefore it's a good way of measuring that.
So for me, the big one on this is, I hear from council, we do a lot, or even from the public, we do a lot of plans, so we don't want those plans sitting on the shelf. This is to make sure that those plans are being implemented and we're moving through those action items to accomplish what we said we were going to do. And I think this is, as Mark said, there's only one measure for this one, but I think that's a big measure.
Double thumbs up, I like this one.
Yeah, I was going to say this is classic balanced scorecard in the sense that we say we have to do something and we're going to measure whether we're doing it or not. And if it comes up 0, we know there's a problem and we're going to start fixing it by implementing things. So this is a really good measure. Okay, then let's move on to the next one because I know we only have about 10 minutes left. Champion community relationships that will foster entrepreneurship. The two proposed measures here are number one, the number of new programs or mentorships for business owners year on year. And the rationale is if some business owners are being mentors to others, they are forming relationships and fostering entrepreneurship. And the second one is % of business participation in these mentorship programs. So this tells us how engaged the business community is in the mentorship programs. And if they aren't, it tells us we need to make changes. Any questions on those? Okay. Let's move on. The next one is establish Canyon City as an economically resilient community. The two proposed measures here are, number one, the number of proactively generated economic development prospects. This tells us how good we are at developing the economy and making us an economically resilient community. And the second one is the dollars of marketing spent outside the area. This tells us how much of an effort we are making at promoting our community externally, and thus making it more resilient. Any questions on those? Okay. The next one is simplify municipal regulations and code. This is in the operational excellence theme. The two proposed measures are the number of regulations and code that need to be simplified. The rationale is this forces us to assess our regulations and code to see what needs to be simplified, what needs to be fixed. And then the second one is the % of identified regulations or code that have been simplified, and we'll measure semi-annually. So this would tell us, how successful we are at simplifying the code regulations we have identified need to be simplified. So the first one's going to require us to assess and decide what needs to be simplified, and the second one's going to measure whether we're actually doing it or not. Any questions on those? Okay. Next one in operational excellence is invest in infrastructure and public safety. The first one is the % increase in patrols, and this is the rationale is if patrols are increasing, it shows we have invested in public safety. And the second one is the number of new infrastructure projects successfully completed. If the rationale there is if the number of infrastructure projects successfully completed increases, we have successfully invested in infrastructure. Any questions on those? Okay. The last two, learning and growth perspective, establish a culture of great customer service. The first measure is the % of staff completing customer service training, which would demonstrate we are training our staff on customer service. And the second one is the citizen customer survey question, average score 0 to 10 rating of city staff customer service. So we would ask, after each interaction with city staff, we would ask people to complete a comment card or answer some kind of survey. And this would show the results of the training. And if ratings improve, we are starting to establish that culture of great customer service. So the first one, provide the training, make sure people are taking the training. The second one, to check the results of that training. Any question on those? And then the last one is the objective was provide opportunities for staff growth and training. The first proposed measure is the % of staff who complete their annual training plan. The rationale is if we monitor to ensure staff complete their training plans, it demonstrates we provide opportunities and take staff growth and training seriously. And the second one is the % of staff qualified to transition to the next higher position. The rationale here is this demonstrates we are providing training that enables staff to advance their careers. Those are the two measures for that last one. Any questions on those?
Jim?
Well, I don't have a question on that, but if you're close to wrapping up, I got a question on a previous
Yeah,
slide.
that was the last objective
Can
in
you
the
go
measure
back
set
to about-
measures. So if you had,
Can you go back about 4 slides to that economic slide?
this one?
No, one more maybe.
Yeah.
Another one.
All right. This is prioritize and implement development projects.
Sure wasn't the
Well,
first
come,
one. you
maybe
showed.
come,
Yeah.
there was something
Yeah,
about
for-
viability or something?
Oh, resiliency. That's this one. Establish Canyon City as an economically resilient community.
I actually,
I just don't see those two measures as being related to that. You need to clarify that.
and I was going to make a comment on this particular one, that the one thing we don't want to do is get conflicting goals or objectives here. And that if we're looking at, spending taxpayer dollars wisely, putting a metric into our balanced scorecard that looks at how many dollars we spent on a particular thing, seems to be counter to the idea of efficiency. So you can always spend more money. That doesn't mean that that's necessarily a good thing. And so I think that perhaps you need to think about that one a little bit more, because spending dollars, a metric on spending how many dollars we spent does not necessarily take the city in a direction. If we achieve the metric, it may not take us in the direction that we want to be going in terms of our overall objectives.
So, explain number 1 to me. I'm not grasping that.
So, Councilman Meisner, historically, Canyon City, Fremont County in general, from an economic development standpoint, has been very reactive to prospecting, and not necessarily even prospecting. We're kind of catching the opportunities that come to us and try and make them happen. We want to try and switch that so we're being more proactive and we're actually targeting industries that are going to help diversify the economy and make it more resilient. And by doing that, being proactive and actually trying to bring industry here to improve that diversity, that diversification of industry, that's what we're trying to measure here with this particular measure. I think, Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick, your comment on marketing spend outside the area is a good one. This one might actually be more of a ratio of marketing spend and what kind of prospects, per prospect does it generate.
I guess if there was a qualifier there I'm just not sure that number 1 tells me anything. I mean, it seems like you should have a qualifier, and I realize you go to the next level, that you're trying to generate the businesses that are going to provide that resilience and balance, and that, I don't think that says that.
Okay.
And I think the same on number 2, defining that it's money that's going to
We don't-
developing prospects. Because when I looked at the marketing, I thought, well, maybe you're collecting how much money like other private businesses are spending on marketing our outside community. Because they're always happy to say, hey, I was just ready to launch a $200,000 campaign on such and such. And that's money that private industries are doing.
Yeah, and I think on a tourism standpoint, we see a lot of that. We've got a lot of businesses that tell us how much they spend to market Canyon City. This is more about bringing primary jobs and building industry in the community.
Well, that may verbally be what you're saying, but that's not what I see
Okay.
in black and white.
So it may need some refinement if that's.
Some kind of balance word in there or something that.
Yeah, if I could add, I think the point about number 2 is well taken, that it could send the wrong incentive, that just spend as much money as you want and then as you can, and then that's good, which isn't. I think it needs to be some kind of ratio as Ryan recommends, so we'll work a little more on refining that one. The first one I really see as kind of interpreting the term resilient as kind of almost as independence, right? So if we're proactively generating things, doing it our own rather than being dependent on others, it's going to make us more resilient. So that's kind of the theory I see in that one, if that provides any clarification. Both points are well taken.
Well, we can work on these and bring something else back.
Are we going to get a copy of this?
Yeah, so,
y-
and we'll need to wrap up here pretty quick
Yeah.
too, Mark, so.
There was an electronic copy in in the packet that was emailed. It didn't make it into the hard copy, but we can get you a hard copy as well.
Yeah, and I'm done. I got through to the last one, and that was the end of my presentation. So thank you all very much for the participation and good ideas and feedback.
Thank you, Mark.
Mayor Smith?
I have a couple questions. One is, what's the next step?
I anticipated that one. So there's a couple next steps typically in a balanced scorecard, which is, as Ryan said, the cascading part. We have a set of objectives and measures right now for the overall, for the city as a whole. And typically the next step is to cascade that to the departments, align departments with the strategy, which I think I talked about back in September, which is typically we take a template like this that looks like this balanced scorecard, the strategy map here, and we say, of these 14 objectives, there's 7 of these or 5 of these or 8 of them, whatever the number is, that really apply to any department in the city, regardless of what they do. And everybody has to help contribute to that part of the strategy. And then there's, the other 7 or 5 or whatever that are tailored to the part of the business that the department is. And we go through each department and help them develop a scorecard that they'll have half of those that are already have objectives and measures, and then they have to kind of develop their objectives and measures for their own customized, tailored part. That's kind of one next step. The other next step is within each of these objectives, or at least not necessarily the objectives up here at the top, but the ones for internal process and learning growth, there's going to be initiatives or strategic projects that are helping you implement your strategy, because this is nothing about implementation right now. This is just what our goals are and how we're going to measure them. There's projects or initiatives that have to be undertaken to implement the strategy. Some of those may already be underway, and we just have to find out what those are and make sure they fit into one of these objectives. If they don't, they may not be something that we should continue doing. Others, there may be a new objective here or something that we've never tried to do before, and we have to come up with those initiatives or projects that we're going to implement to help implement the strategy. So there's kind of the 2 pieces, the alignment and the cascading, and then the projects or initiatives. And Ryan and I had a discussion or two about that, and we'll continue this discussion.
And that kind of leads a little bit to my second question of talking about alignment with staff. But a lot of these objectives have to do with diversification, economic resiliency, and public customer service. And a part of me wonders if we could provide this to the Mayor's Advisory Council, because they are diversified, and if they could review this and also give feedback. I think that I would like to use that opportunity to involve them in this process a little bit, make sure that we are in alignment from the public and the private industry side.
And that is really the first step to determining how diversified we are right now, in order to determine who these industries, or what these industries are, where these people are coming from. So yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Whether we're at that point now, or if we need to tweak it more, that, I guess that'll be up to Mark and Ryan to determine.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was going to say, ultimately, it's your guys' decision of when you're comfortable with sharing this outside the organization. You have to be comfortable and say, this is pretty much, what we want, what we're going to go forward with. I thought about this with the discussion about the Chamber of Commerce, right? That you want to be able to go to them and say, this is our strategy. How are you going to help us implement it, right? Not what's wrong with it, because then they tell you what they want to do. You have to be confident that this is the way you want to go. How can you help us? That would be my suggestion. Just make sure that you're comfortable with making it public.
Yeah, and I would echo that. I want to make sure that we, council's comfortable with the measures, and we finalize this, and then we can start sharing that information out.
Well, and I think they also need to have some buy-in and not be us coming to them saying, this is us,
Right,
now you do. They don't like that.
right.
Right, but this is to guide what we're doing. This is what's going to guide us and move us forward.
The problem is that the "we're" includes them. Because I realize you're not, but we are an elected body that represents those "we's." So that's where we come from.
Okay.
Well, my suggestion there would be that you can say, this is our strategy and this is what we want to do. we can work together on these things. I mean, you're not stopping them from doing other things on their own, and maybe they have some great ideas that you may want to tweak yours based on what they're saying. But ultimately, I think you get their buy-in. And you say, what on this is something that you guys think you can contribute to? How can you help us do this? That sort of thing. They're going to get cooperation from the city in these areas. So I think that's really a benefit to them to have some buy-in.
Well, and I think part of the Mayor's Advisory Council is that they are supposed to advise to make sure that we are in alignment, that we are in the heartbeat, and that if we can get their buy-in, then we can also get their blessing as we move forward.
Yeah, and the interesting thing also is that, remember, these objectives, and let me show the slide without the measures, are really the what we want to do. Where you can get the buy-in is the how, right? You don't have the how we're going to do it, and that's where you can get the chamber or the mayor's advisory committee or so forth to say, well, you want to do this. This is how we would do it. This is how we would do it. This is how you should do it. And the how part is where you can get their cooperation.
Okay, as long as we have that in part of that strategy and that planning, I'll be happy. Thank you.
Who did that email come from?
This came from Cindy.
So it'd be
You
the,
got it? I don't see it.
It came from Cindy. It was the updates, adding or changing the agenda.
It came today, right? Or,
No, it came last Thursday, I think.
oh, last week.
yeah.
I know I got 2 different ones.
I don't.
Yeah, you would have gotten a PDF, and it had the business year-end review in it, and then at the end of it, there's this presentation as well.
We'll
But
work
we
on that.
can, I can resend it with just the presentation.
Great, that would be appreciated, I'm sure. Any other questions or comments?
Now we got to go to the next meeting.
This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.